Hey guys, in our last video we talked about one Arctic animal, the Arctic fox, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about what animals do in the Arctic. So we're going to learn about two Arctic animals, penguins and polar bears. Penguins and polar bears have adaptations that help them survive in the Arctic. What are adaptations? Do you guys have any idea? Adaptations are any physical or behavioral changes that an animal undergoes in order to survive. We are going to talk about two special adaptations that penguins and polar bears have, along with other Arctic animals, that help them survive those very cold temperatures. First, we're going to talk about penguins. Now, penguins aren't just found in the Arctic. They're actually found in very warm places as well, but we are only going to talk about the penguins that live in the Arctic. Penguins like to spend a lot of time in the water. They're very good swimmers. They can't actually fly, so they like to swim around and search for their food. But wouldn't you think a penguin that spends most of their time in freezing cold water would be cold all the time? Well, that's where their special adaptation comes in. Penguins are a type of bird, which means that they are covered in feathers, but their feathers are special. Penguins secrete a special oil from their skin, kind of like when you sweat and sweat comes out of your pores. Penguins produce an oil, and this oil coats their feathers. Water and oil don't mix, so when that oil coats their feathers, it basically makes them waterproof. All the water just rolls right off of them. If the water can't stick to their feathers, they stay nice and warm. It's like wearing a raincoat. You stay nice and dry even if it's raining out. There is an animal here in Iowa that does something similar to the penguin, and that is a river otter. They also secrete oil to coat their fur to make their fur waterproof. Pretty cool, right? But now let's switch over to a polar bear. What special adaptation does a polar bear have to survive in the Arctic? Now, if you guessed that they're white, that's also a very good adaptation. But the one I wanted to talk about today was their blubber, which is an extra thick layer of fat. Polar bears are the only Arctic animals that have blubber. Whales, seals, walruses, and a lot more also have blubber, but we're going to stick to the polar bear. Now, when I say polar bears have blubber and that it's a thick layer of fat, I mean thick. On average, below the skin is a thick 4-inch layer of blubber. That blubber provides very good insulation for polar bears, kind of like wearing a warm, puffy coat in the wintertime for us. It might be kind of hard to understand just how these adaptations work, so we are going to do a couple of experiments. First, we are going to do an experiment that shows how penguin feathers repel water, and then we will do an experiment that shows how blubber keeps Arctic animals nice and warm. Here are the supplies you'll need for your penguin feather experiment. So you'll just need a picture of a penguin. I can put this in the comments if you guys would like to color this penguin. You need a crayon and a spray bottle with water, and that's it. So we talked a little bit about how penguin feathers kind of repel the water, and they do that because they have oil on their feathers, and oil and water don't mix, so the water just rolls right off the feathers. So we're going to do an experiment that kind of shows how that works. So instead of oil, we are going to be using a crayon, because when you color with a crayon, it's kind of waxy, and the waxiness also repels water, kind of like the oil. So that's going to represent how the oil repels the water. So this is a super easy experiment. All you have to do is color your penguin, and then we're going to spray water on it. So I'm going to make sure I color my whole penguin. That even means the black part as well. But try to stay in the line so that you can see how this experiment works really well. So I'm going to color my whole penguin. It can be any color you want, since it is just an experiment and you're probably going to throw it away afterwards. I picked blue. This is the first one I grabbed out of the box, so that's the color of my penguin. Alright, so I've got my whole penguin colored, and you can tell if you have most of it colored because if you run your hands over the top, it feels kind of smooth and kind of waxy. So, got my penguin colored. He's got his wax on his wings or his oil on his feathers. So, now we can do the experiment. So basically, all you're going to do is you're going to spray your penguin with some water. And what's going to happen, I want you to look closely at where you colored with the crayon and compare it to where you didn't color. Okay, so I'm going to start spraying my penguin. I'm going to spray all over. Okay, so I'm going to lift this up so you guys can see. If you look at where I didn't color, the paper is already very wet and it's starting to curl. But if you look closely at where I did color, do you see a water droplet forming there? There's little water droplets all over this penguin that you can kind of see a little bit. And that's because the crayon protects the paper. It kind of forms a barrier, kind of like the oil coats the feathers on the penguin and repels the water. So you can see, just by doing a little coloring right here, how the penguin stays nice and dry and warm in the Arctic. All right. Here are the supplies for the polar bear blubber experiment. So you need a big bowl or a big container filled with very cold water and either ice, or like me, I didn't have ice at the office, so I just went out and got some snow and put that in there because you want it to be really cold in there. You also need a plastic spoon and some Crisco. The Crisco is going to act as the blubber. And then you need 2 Baggies. So the first thing that you want to do is make your blubber glove for your hand. So what you're gonna do is you're going to take some Crisco and you are going to put it in a baggie. So I'm just gonna scoop it out of here. Stick it right in. And again, this Crisco is going to act as the blubber or fat that a polar bear has to stay warm. All right, so I've got a lot of Crisco in there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use this other bag. That's what's going to protect my hand. And I'm going to stick it down in this Crisco filled bag. Kind of want to squish it around so it's covering your hand and your fingers. Alright, that's pretty well covering my hand. So now I have kind of a glove that is filled with blubber. So now we can do the experiment. So I've got my ice water here. And one thing you can do if you want to is kind of time yourself and see how long you can leave your fingers in the ice water, but don't do it too long. Otherwise your fingers will start hurting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to put my bare hand in there and see how cold it is. So here we go. It's gonna be very cold. Okay, yes, it is very, very cold. Okay, so right now I don't think I could leave my hand in there very long. But now we're gonna compare that to our blubber covered hand. Okay, so I'm gonna stick that in there and see if I can even feel how cold it is. Okay, so right now, I can tell it's a little cold, but it is nothing like this hand. I think I could leave this in here for a long time. So I've had my Blubber covered hand in here for a little close to a minute or so, and my hand is still very warm. Now, this hand is still red from about the 10 seconds I had it in the water, but this hand is just fine. So I hope you guys can do this experiment at home and just feel how much of a difference the Blubber makes. It keeps animals nice and warm when they're up in the Arctic cold temperatures. Now, we don't have this Blubber, but we don't necessarily need it like these animals. But this is just a fun experiment to see how it feels to have Blubber. That was it for our winter themed videos. I hope you enjoyed those, and we'll learn about something new in February. Thanks for watching, guys.